All right, so we're going to start off this semester with a quick review of everything we did last semester that will be important for moving on this semester. So, first off, we're going to be multiplying. In this case, remember to distribute your x to every item. Helps to draw lines. So we're going to do x times 2x squared, which is going to give us 2x cubed, because remember this is x to the first power, and we keep the base and add the exponents, minus 3x squared, because that's a 1 there, and then plus 5x. So that's the first three terms. If you think about it, we're doing a 2 by 3, and 2 times 3 is 6, so we should get 6 terms right off the bat. But now we need to multiply the negative 4 times all 4 items. So that's going to give me negative 8x squared, positive 12, negative 4 times negative 3, the x comes along, and then minus 20. Now we're going to combine like terms. So I like to do some kind of grouping symbols to keep track of what I'm putting together. So 2x squared is going to be by itself, sorry, 2x cubed is what I meant to put. Eraser doesn't want to show up. Now it does. Technical difficulties, I apologize. And then negative 3x squared minus 8x squared is going to be negative 11x squared. 5x plus 12x is going to be plus 17x. And the minus 20 is by itself. And there is the final result. Okay, factor review. Remember, always try to take the GCF out first. Alright? Now, if you have two terms, first look for a GCF. Then, difference of two squares, when you have this format, it's going to break down into two parentheses. One's going to be plus, one's going to be minus. And then it's just a plus b and a minus b. So in other words, it's the square root of this term and the square root of this term. Okay? So for example, if it was 9x squared minus 16, okay, well, that would be 3x plus 4 and 3x minus 4. Square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4. Now, the sum of two squares is very similar. It's also going to break down into two parentheses, 1 plus, 1 minus. The only thing you got to remember is you're still going to take the square root of the first term, square root of the second term, but because this is plus, we need to add in the I. That is because I times I is going to be I squared, which is negative 1, and that will turn the second negative term into a positive. But since this is 1 plus and 1 minus, the middle term will still drop out. Okay. So for sum and difference of cubes, remember we need to think about SOAP. Same, opposite, always positive. So you're going to start off by taking the cube root of the first term and the cube root of the second term. Okay, so if this was 8x cubed minus 27, okay, the cube root of 8 is 2. The cube root of x cubed is x, and the cube root of 27 is 3. Now, you're going to square the first term. You're going to multiply the first and second term, and you're going to square the last term. So in this case, 2 to x squared would be 4x squared. 3 times 2x is 6x, and 3 squared is 9. And now here's where the soap comes in. It's same, opposite, always positive. Same, opposite, always positive. And it's going to work the exact same way here. We're going to have A, B, A squared, AB, and B squared. Same, opposite, always positive. And that's it. Okay, for 3 terms, you're going to look for GCF always. It's going to be in this format, and we're going to use guess and check to try to factor it out into 2 parentheses. And we'll get into some examples down here. 4 terms, factor by grouping. Going to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms, take the GCF out of both, factor out the parentheses, write the GCFs in parentheses. And we'll show you how to remember how to do that. Okay, so I have a difference of 2 squared. So I just take the square root of 4 and write it down. Square root of x squared, write it down. Square root of 49, write it down. I want 1 plus, 1 minus. I'm finished. Example 3. It's a sum of 2 perfect squares. It's going to be the same setup. Square root of 9, square root of x squared, and the square root of 121. 1 plus, 1 minus. The only thing I got to remember is I have to add the I in. Okay, now this is a trinomial. I'm going to factor with guess and check, but I always want to take the GCF out first. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. It's also going to make my life easier when I factor. Remember to not throw away the 2. Now I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 15 that differ by 2. Well, 15 minus 1 is 14. 5 minus 3 is 2. Now, this gives me a 3. That gives me a 5. I want more positives than negatives. And I can check. 5 minus 3 is positive 2. And there's my answer. Now this one's factored by grouping because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So I'm going to group these 2 and group those 2. Now you're going to take the x out of the first term. And actually you're going to take the x squared out. That looks bad. Not sure what happened there. And take the x squared out. That's going to leave me x plus 2. Now, you had me last semester, you'll remember. Otherwise, I tell you to cheat. Go ahead and write x plus 2 here, because we want these 2 to be exactly the same. They're common to both. So go ahead and write that. Now ask yourself, what do I have to divide this by to get x plus 2? And that helps you, especially with the positive and negative. So if you just put 5, like plus 5, ask yourself, is negative 5 divided by 5 positive 1? Is a negative divided by positive positive? No, it's not. So I need to take a negative out. Negative 10 divided by negative 5 is positive 2. Now, I'm going to hook these 2 up. That's my new parentheses. And I only write the x plus 2 once, because that's common to both. Okay, now, solving is the exact same thing. It's just we have one more step at the end, and that is to actually find out what the values are. So we set the parentheses equal to 0. That's it. Okay, it says you might be able to use the square root method if the b term is missing. So in this case, like right here, you could, since there is no b term, just say x squared equals 9 and square root both sides and get, remember, whenever you're solving, always plus and minus 2 answers. Okay, so some people might say let's just move the 2x squared over, and that's fine. It is one move, but I like to always keep my x squareds positive. So I'm going to move the other terms over to the left side, which is going to become a positive x, a minus 3, and the important part is don't forget that. Now I'm just going to guess and check. Don't forget the equal 0. The only way to get 2 is 2 and 1, and the only way to get 3 is 3 and 1. And it's just guess and check. So if I do this, here's a simple way to check it. Remember, it's guess and check, not guess and hope or guess and pray. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 3 is 6. Do those terms differ by 1? No, they do not. Therefore, I'm going to go up and erase, and I'm going to change. Wow, that's what happened. I meant to do that. Went the wrong way. I'm going to change the order, and I'm going to put the 3 here and the 1 here. And what that gives me now is 3 times 1 and 2 times 1, and 3 minus 2 is 1. And remember, I want positive 3 and negative 2 to have a positive 1 left over. So that's going to be positive minus. Now, I'm not finished yet. If I was factoring, I would be done. But I'm not factoring. So I need to set up 2x plus 3 equal to 0 and x minus 1 equal to 0. I'm running out of room, so I'm going to subtract 3 and divide by 2. And here, I'm just going to add 1 to both sides. And those are my answers. Negative 3 halves and 1. Okay, over here, I'm going to move everything to the left side. So that's going to be x cubed plus 2x squared minus 9x minus 18. I'm going to factor by grouping again. Remember, that's equal to 0. I'm going to take the x squared out, which gives me x plus 2. I want x plus 2 right here automatically. So what do I need to divide? I'm sorry, that's a negative 9x. Said it, but didn't write it. So what do I have to divide negative 9 by to get positive 1? That's going to be negative 9. Now that gives me x squared minus 9 times x plus 2 equals 0. Now at this point there's 2 ways to go. We can set x squared minus 9 equal to 0. And just like up here, we already know what the answer is going to be, plus or minus 3. The other thing is we can just recognize that this is a difference of 2 squares and factor it like this. And then we set each one equal to 0. And that's why we get 2 answers when we're solving. So our answers are plus and minus 3 and negative 2. Okay, synthetic division. Hopefully remember, even though there's quite a few steps to this, it is much nicer than doing long division. So, you can read on your own. You can hit pause if you want and read through. I'm not going to read through all these steps to you. We're just going to do the math. So remember, the number in the box, you're going to do the drop down, multiply, add, all the way through. So let's just dive into the problem. Okay, remember, this is the same thing as if you wrote it like this. Or if you wrote it like this. They all mean the same thing. Sorry, my board's going a little wonky. Times x plus 3 to the negative 1. They all mean divide by x plus 3. It's just 3 different ways of writing it. Okay. So, I'm going to set this equal to 0 to find out that my number in the box is going to be negative 3. Now, I look and I have a coefficient for my x cubed, I do not have an x squared term. So I need to fill in a 0 there. I have a negative 4 for my x to the 1, and I have my 5. So, drop down, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. So my answer is, remember, if we start off with cubed, we're going to start here with squared. Because if you think about it, x cubed divided by x to the 1 is x squared. And that's going to be minus 6x plus 14, and then minus 37 over my original divisor of x plus 3. And that's it. Okay, just a few more. And we're actually going to solve on these. Now, remember, in this case, this is a different way of writing it. This just means, if you look at it, it says, find the solutions given a 0 or factor. This means that we are telling you this is a factor. This does go into it. Okay? And remember, this could also be written as f of positive 5. And then you just have to work backwards. So our number going in the box is 5. And we know it's going to be a factor. In fact, since you know it's going to be a factor, remind yourself at the end, or at the beginning actually, to list that. Because that's one of the most common things, is not to write that down. So, we have a 1 here, we have a negative 5, we have a negative 9, and we have a 45. We have no need for zeros. Drop down the 1, multiply. 0, multiply. Add, multiply, add. That's what we want. No remainders. Now, we're going to, since we started with 3, this is going to be x squared. Now the 0 means I could write plus 0x, or just skip it and write minus 9 equals 0. I'm going to factor this to x plus 3, x minus 3. Or I could have done square root method and just made it x squared equals 9, like we've already done a few times. And we're going to get x equals 3 and x equals negative 3. So those are my 3 answers. 3, negative 3, and 5. Okay? One more time here. Set this equal to 0, gives me negative 7 in the box. I have this one you have to be careful with because it's not in order. So it's x cubed minus 37x plus 84. Not to mention, there is missing an x squared. So we have my cubed, my x squared, my x to the 1, and then my constant. Drop the 1, multiply it by negative 7. Add. Multiply by negative 7, to be 49. That's going to be 12. And then multiply by negative 7, and that's going to give me 0. So x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. So I need two numbers that factor and multiply to give me 12. So 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, that add up to 7. That add to 7. Technically negative 7. So that's going to be 3 and 4. Now if they're going to add to negative 7, they're both negative. And that's going to be equal to 0. So my answers here are x equals positive 3, x equals positive 4. And don't forget, x is also equal to negative 7. And here's a clue. This tells you how many answers you should have at the end. And that's it, except for a little cartoon. There you go.